In a world overflowing with noise, distraction, and subtle deception, most people are falling behind, and it's not because they're weak, unmotivated, or lacking potential. It's because they haven't yet learned how to see the battlefield for what it truly is. Every day, we're thrown into conversations, environments, and decisions that demand clarity, not timidity, not naivete, clarity. We are called to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves, firm in discernment, steady in purpose, and grounded in truth. Not aggressive, not manipulative, but wise. And wisdom, when lived out with discipline, becomes a form of dominion, influence, authority. Today, I want to speak to you not about greed, not about tyranny, not about the cold pursuit of power for its own sake. No. What we're talking about is rising through wisdom, leading through character, and exercising power through a clarity that sets you apart from the noise that surrounds you. If you want to walk into a room and radiate a presence others feel before you say a word, if you want to command not just attention, but genuine authority, then listen closely. Here are 5 ancient principles, yes. The world may label them Machiavellian, but they are rooted in deeper, timeless truths that will teach you how to outsmart manipulation, rise above confusion, and navigate life with a strategic calmness that most people never master. Let's begin. Rule number 1. Master the power of silence. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not withdrawal. Silence is not passivity. Silence is restrained power. It is self-mastery under pressure. It is discipline in a world addicted to endless noise. From the second you open your eyes in the morning, the world shouts at you notifications, debates, opinions, gossip, commentary, arguments, messages. Noise upon noise. Everyone is talking, few are listening, and almost no one understands the value of simply holding their tongue. But among all the chatter, how rare, how valuable is the person who knows when to speak and when not to. There is wisdom in silence. There is strength in not needing to explain everything you know, defend every point, or correct every misunderstanding. The reason is simple. Real power does not need a microphone. Real power does not need to announce itself. Real power simply exists. And when you carry that kind of inner stillness, rooted, stable, unshaken people feel it. They recognize something different about you, even if they can't name it. Silence, my friend, is not weakness. Silence is strategy. When you're slow to speak, you give yourself time to see with clarity. You listen not just to answer, but to understand. And when you understand, you gain advantage. Most people talk to be noticed. The wise stay silent to notice everything. Those who rush to speak reveal too much emotions, intentions, insecurities. They show their hand before the game even starts. But when you practice silence, you become unreadable, unpredictable, untouchable. People can't manipulate what they can't interpret. They can't attack what they can't define. Think of a lion. It doesn't roar before it hunts. It moves silently, patiently, with awareness. It doesn't waste energy on noise. The roar comes after the victory. Never before. And today, people roar all day online, in arguments, in conversations, and yet they catch nothing. But those who watch quietly, who observe, who wait for the right moment, those are the ones who strike with precision. Many of you are in situations where others are provoking you, poking at you, trying to get a reaction. They want you to lose your composure. They want you to respond impulsively so they can use your own words against you. Do not take the bait. You are not required to respond to every accusation. You don't have to defend yourself against every rumor. Sometimes the most powerful answer is no answer at all. Truth does not need you to shout for it. It stands by itself if you have the patience to let it. And this is important. Silence is not just psychological, it's spiritual. When you quiet the world, you hear what truly matters: your intuition, your discernment, the voice of God, the truth beneath the noise. Some of your greatest breakthroughs will not come during loud conversations or emotional reactions. They will come in stillness. Silence sharpens perception. It allows you to see the motives behind people's words, the insecurity behind their laughter, the truth behind their mask. You begin to perceive not just what people say, but why they say it. Silence gives you vision. There are people who walk into a room and command attention without saying anything. Everyone simply waits for them to speak, not out of fear, but out of respect. Presence like that cannot be faked. It is earned by consistent self-mastery. And the moment you learn to stay quiet, not out of fear, but out of confidence, you become the person who rattles the insecure and empowers the wise. You become the person whose calmness exposes other people's restlessness, whose patience exposes their impulsiveness, whose silence exposes their need for attention. That is the essence of silent power. Not loudness, not performance presence. You become the person who can walk through fire, hear lies, face criticism, endure gossip, and still hold your peace, not because you don't feel the heat, but because you know who truly holds the power. And that brings us to the next principle, one just as powerful. Rule number 2, control perception. Control power. People are not led by truth. They are led by what they believe is true. And what they believe is not shaped by facts alone, it is shaped by perception. Perception is the real battlefield. Perception is the silent lever that moves influence. If you can shape how people see you, you don't have to control much else, because the one who controls perception controls outcomes. You've seen this in your own life. There are people with integrity, character, and courage who go unnoticed. Not because they lack substance, but because they lack presentation. And then there are others less wise, less ethical, who rise simply because they know how to project an image. It may not feel fair, but it's reality. The world doesn't respond to what's hidden in your heart. It responds to what it can see. You may have potential, you may have strength, you may have vision, but if others don't perceive it, they will treat you like you don't have it. And the reverse is also true. You might be unsure, afraid, or inexperienced, but if you carry yourself with grounded confidence, you can still lead the room. Perception becomes the doorway through which power enters. Not manipulation, not illusion, discernment. You're not called to be fake, but you are called to be wise. You're not called to lie, but you are called to understand timing, posture, and presence. Those who understand perception become masters at more than words. They understand that tone, timing, silence, and body language communicate more than vocabulary ever will. The world reads symbols, not sentences. A bowed head might mean humility. It might also mean defeat. A direct gaze might inspire trust. It might also provoke fear. You must know how you're being interpreted, and you must respond with intention. Every person you encounter carries assumptions with them, assumptions about power, confidence, authority. And if you don't shape these assumptions, the world will shape them against you by default. This is why perception matters. Not because appearance is everything, but because appearance influences everything else. Consider this. A king dressed in rags is ignored in the marketplace, but place a crown on his head, the same man, same wisdom, and suddenly people bow. What changed? Not the man, only the perception. The one who understands how to shape perception wields power without ever having to demand it. You don't need to lie, you don't need to pretend, you simply need to reveal selectively. Truth is a sword, powerful, sharp, transformative. But even a sword must be drawn at the right moment. Not every truth is meant for every audience. Not every detail must be shared with everyone. The wise know what to reveal, when to reveal it, and what to withhold in order to preserve influence. Transparency without timing is vulnerability. Revelation with discernment is strategy. There will be moments when you must appear strong, even if you feel the opposite. Not for ego, but because leadership requires stability. Others depend on your clarity. There will be moments when you must appear unbothered, not because you're numb, but because you're rooted. And there will even be moments when you intentionally appear less capable, less informed, or less confident. Not because you are, but because the situation requires underestimation. Sometimes you need others to lower their guard so your strategy can unfold. To control perception is to play a higher game. It is understanding that power often flows not from the move itself, but from the message the move sends. Every gesture becomes a tool. Every silence becomes a statement. Every decision becomes a signal. What others perceive in you determines how they treat you. If they see authority, they follow. If they see instability, they hesitate. If they see vision, they align. If they see confusion, they distance themselves. The control of perception is not vanity. It is stewardship, an intentional shaping of how your presence influences the world around you. Rule number 3. Win the mind before you win the fight. Every battle, every argument, every negotiation, every conflict begins in one place: the mind. Long before a confrontation happens, the real war is already happening in thought. The mind is not simply where ideas live. It is where reality is shaped. Your beliefs about yourself, your enemy, your chances, your worth. These beliefs quietly pull the strings of your decisions. Someone can be talented, trained, and well-connected, but if their mindset is fractured, their path will be crooked. They will sabotage themselves before their opposition ever gets the chance. That's why powerful individuals do not begin with tactics. They begin with mental clarity. They secure the inner battlefield first. They rule the realm of thought before attempting to rule anything external. If you can shape the mind, you can shape the outcome. If you influence the thought, you influence the person. If you win the perspective, you win the argument before it even begins. Most people prepare for conflict by sharpening their words, organizing their points, gathering their evidence. The wise prepare by shaping beliefs. They don't ask, "What should I say?" They ask, "What must they believe?" Because if the mind is already aligned, resistance is broken before the first word leaves your mouth. People form thoughts about you instantly: how you stand, the energy you carry, the steadiness of your voice. They're interpreting you constantly, even before you speak. The truly dominant individual understands this. They speak not just to communicate, but to plant seeds. Every word is a seed. Every thought is soil. If you want to outsmart others, don't attack their behavior. Change the belief beneath it. All patterns come from mindset. All reactions come from thought. Change the thought, and you change the person. Shift the perspective, and the whole atmosphere transforms. In personal relationships, most conflicts aren't even about the other person. They're about your beliefs about them. Your beliefs about yourself. Your interpretation of the dynamic. Some people lose battles before they begin simply because their mind whispers defeat. They walk into rooms doubting themselves, and that doubt shapes every word, every posture, every response. Your mind must be guarded. Your mind must be curated. You cannot give every voice permission to speak into your thoughts. If the mind breaks, the life follows. If the mind strengthens, everything else aligns. Conviction wins the mind. Clarity wins the mind. Confidence wins the mind. Those who shape thoughts shape destinies. Those who master their mind eventually master their world. Rule number 4. Exploit the weakness that pride hides. Pride is loud. Pride is polished. Pride walks into the room wearing armor, announcing strength, projecting certainty. But behind every display of pride lies something fragile. A fear, a wound, a need, a weakness carefully concealed. Pride is never built on true strength. Pride is a mask worn to cover insecurity. And if you want to move with wisdom, if you want to lead with discernment, you must learn not to be fooled by the show. Because pride is the greatest camouflage people use to hide the parts of themselves they hope no one ever discovers. Many people who talk the loudest, brag the most, or walk with inflated ego are not showcasing confidence. They're covering a fear. They fear being insignificant. They fear being wrong. They fear being unseen. So they build a wall of pride to protect themselves. But here's what you must understand. For every wall of pride, there is always a crack. And through that crack, influence flows. This is not about manipulation. This is about understanding human nature. This is about strategy, not domination. If you want to move people, lead people, or navigate difficult personalities, you must learn to see not just the behavior, but the fear behind the behavior. Some doors do not open through direct confrontation. They open through insight, through understanding, through awareness of the hidden vulnerability behind the performance. Even the most powerful people you meet, the CEOs, the leaders, the confident voices, often carry deep insecurities beneath the surface. They act untouchable not because they are, but because they cannot afford to be seen as anything less. But pride, no matter how well constructed, always reveals itself when pressure is applied. The wise do not attack pride head-on, because attacking pride directly triggers the very insecurity pride was built to protect. Instead, the wise observe. They listen. They wait. They look for the moment pride overreaches. Pride always overreaches. It stretches. It exaggerates. It pushes beyond its own limits in order to maintain the illusion of confidence. And that moment of overreach, that is where opportunity appears. Someone who is too proud to admit fear will act boldly, but without calculation. Someone who is too proud to admit need will act independently, but without support. Someone who is too proud to accept correction will act with certainty, but without truth. Each of these moments is an opening, not to destroy them, but to guide them, not to humiliate them, but to understand how they operate. Because the one who can see through pride can navigate any environment without being thrown off by ego-driven performances. Let's go deeper. Pride fears exposure above all else. It feels safest only when it controls the narrative. It cannot tolerate being questioned, corrected, or seen too clearly. And this means something important. Whenever someone is performing pride, look for what that performance is protecting. That is the place where they are most vulnerable. That is the place where true connection or true strategy is possible. When others push for conflict, pride pushes back even harder. But when you move with subtlety, when you acknowledge strengths, when you speak calmly, when you direct your influence toward what they value, you bypass their defenses entirely. You don't need to tear pride down. You only need to understand it. Some leaders fail because they attack pride without perceiving the insecurity behind it. They challenge the ego, and in doing so, they awaken its full resistance. But those who seek true dominance, true mastery, do not waste time wrestling with pride. They let pride expose itself. They let pride rush ahead. They let pride self-destruct through its own blindness. And while pride performs, the wise person observes. While pride demands attention, the wise person gathers information. While pride shows off, the wise person identifies the weakness. Eventually, pride collapses under its own weight. It reveals too much. It pushes too far. It makes the very mistake it was trying to avoid. And in those moments, a patient, perceptive person has the advantage, because they were never fighting the performance. They were studying the truth beneath it. This brings us to one of the greatest principles of personal power. Rule number 5. Always remain the mystery they cannot solve. In a world obsessed with exposure, clarity, and oversharing, there is a rare and commanding power in being mysterious, not deceptive, not dishonest, but intentionally concealed. The greatest strength you have is not what you show, it is what you refuse to reveal. The most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest voice. It's the one nobody can quite figure out. Because what people can't understand, they can't predict. And what they can't predict, they can't control. Mystery keeps you from being placed in a box. Mystery keeps others cautious. Mystery keeps your movements unpredictable. Mystery keeps your power intact. There is a kind of influence that flows silently. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to explain its motives. It doesn't need to broadcast its plans. It simply exists, and everyone else feels it. People crave certainty. They want to label you. They want to categorize you. They want to understand you so they know how to deal with you. But the moment you become predictable, you become manageable. And once you are manageable, you're no longer respected. You're tolerated. Mystery removes that option completely. Mystery keeps people off balance. It keeps them watching. It keeps them thinking twice. It keeps them wondering about your next move before you even make it. And in that wondering, in that uncertainty, you hold the upper hand. Some of the greatest minds in history were mysterious by design. They spoke little. They revealed slowly. They allowed others to underestimate them while they quietly built, prepared, and planned. Power is not always expressed in what you say. Often, it's expressed in what you withhold. You do not need to explain everything. You do not need to broadcast your intentions. You do not need to defend your decisions. When your identity is secure and your purpose is firm, silence becomes more powerful than noise. Even God, in spiritual terms, moves in mystery. Not every answer comes instantly. Not every plan is revealed at once. There are seasons of silence, not because He is absent, but because timing is more powerful than explanation. You must learn to walk the same way. Your next move doesn't need an announcement. Your motives don't need a speech. Your strategy doesn't need validation. What is hidden is often far more powerful than what is exposed. What happens when people know everything about you, your insecurities, your patterns, your emotional triggers, your fears? They prepare for you, they predict you, they pre-plan how to manipulate you, challenge you, or exploit you. Predictability removes your leverage. Mystery restores it. When you remain the unknown variable in the room, you force others to overthink, second-guess, and reposition themselves. You become the one they can't read, can't categorize, can't fully understand. That is not manipulation. That is dominion. Because you are not fighting for control, control follows you naturally when your presence carries depth and unpredictability. Mystery demands respect automatically. People step carefully around what they do not fully understand. But here's the deeper truth. Mystery isn't just for power. Mystery protects your spirit. Mystery protects your vision. Mystery protects your peace. When everyone has access to your life, your thoughts, your vulnerabilities, your dreams, your struggles, you become spiritually and emotionally exposed. You open doors for interference, for sabotage, for judgment, for unnecessary noise. But when you choose restraint, when you choose strategic privacy, when you choose selective revelation, you create a shield around yourself. You preserve your energy. You stay focused. You stay aligned. Mystery keeps your destiny safe from those who do not deserve access to it. Let's go deeper. People naturally underestimate what they cannot fully measure, and being underestimated is one of the greatest strategic advantages you can have. While others talk loudly, you listen. While they show off, you learn. While they broadcast their next steps, you move quietly with intention. By the time they realize what you're doing, the move is already complete. The transformation already made. The decision already executed. You don't owe the world an explanation. You owe yourself progress. Mystery gives you room to grow without interference, without commentary, without pressure. It also creates an aura, an unspoken presence, that influences others without a single word. When your silence holds weight, when your eyes communicate more than your voice, when your movements are unpredictable, people naturally become cautious in how they approach you. They treat you with curiosity instead of assumption, with respect instead of familiarity, with intention instead of carelessness. And this is crucial. The moment people believe they fully understand you, they begin to treat you casually. They step across lines. They feel bold enough to challenge you. They no longer fear consequences because predictability makes them comfortable. But a mysterious person? People don't test them carelessly. They don't assume they know what they're thinking. They don't feel entitled to their time, their energy, or their emotions. Mystery keeps your authority intact. Some of the most effective leaders, warriors, thinkers, and spiritual giants in history mastered the art of strategic concealment. They never showed their hand too early. They never revealed their entire plan. They let their results speak for them. You don't need to brag. You don't need to announce. You don't need to defend. Your fruit will speak. Your progress will speak. Your presence will speak. When you remain a mystery, your actions carry more weight because people cannot attach assumptions or predictability to them. Imagine walking into a room where nobody knows your next move. Imagine carrying a presence that shifts the atmosphere without a single word. Imagine being the one people watch closely, not because of loudness, but because of depth. That is the power of mystery. And here's the beautiful part. Mystery is not about being aloof or cold. It's about being intentional. It's about revealing only what aligns with your purpose. It's about giving access only to those who have earned the right to know you. You are not a public museum. You are a private masterpiece, revealed piece by piece, season by season, purpose by purpose. Some of the most powerful moves you will ever make will be silent ones. You will shift the entire direction of your life without announcing anything. You will walk away from toxic patterns without posting a single quote. You will heal in private. You will grow in private. You will build in private. And when the world finally notices, it will be too late for them to interfere. Too late to distract, too late to sabotage. This is how dominion is built, not through noise, not through argument, but through intentional silence and sovereign privacy. Mystery is a form of spiritual armor. It shields you from unnecessary chaos. It preserves your emotional clarity. It keeps your steps protected from those who would try to predict or obstruct them. And when your life is grounded in that kind of stillness, something powerful emerges, an aura. Not just attention, not just recognition, aura. The kind of presence that makes others adjust their posture. The kind of energy that causes people to lower their volume when you enter the room. The kind of depth that reassures the wise and unsettles the proud. Because you are not merely seen, you are felt. Not because you seek the spotlight, but because you carry something deeper than visibility. You carry presence. This is why your silence must be intentional. Your privacy must be purposeful. Your restraint must be strategic. The one who reveals everything becomes predictable. The one who explains everything becomes accessible. The one who exposes everything becomes vulnerable. But the one who remains grounded, unreadable, steady, that person becomes a force, a presence, someone who shapes the environment without needing to control it. And this leads to the final understanding, a culmination of all the rules combined. When you master silence, control perception, win the mind, discern the insecurity behind pride, and walk in mystery, you rise above the chaos. You walk in dominion without force. Your presence speaks louder than any argument, and your influence is rooted not in noise, but in wisdom. These principles aren't random. They are interconnected. They reinforce one another. They transform the way you move through the world, not with aggression, not with ego, but with a grounded spiritual authority that others can feel even when you say nothing at all. When you master silence, the world can no longer bait you with noise. When you shape perception, the world can no longer define you. When you win the mind, battles dissolve before they begin. When you discern pride, you navigate people with wisdom rather than resistance. And when you walk as a mystery, you remove the possibility of being controlled by anyone. This is not manipulation. This is not deceit. This is self-governance. This is dominion rooted in insight. Let's bring all of this together. Stillness as power. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is precision. It is the mark of someone who has learned to anchor their emotions, guard their mind, and move with intention rather than impulse. Stillness means you are no longer thrown around by the storms others create. You are no longer shaped by the chaos around you. While others scramble to be heard, you listen. While others fight to be right, you observe. While others react, you calculate. Stillness is what allows you to see clearly when everyone else is blinded by emotion. Stillness exposes motives. Stillness reveals patterns. Stillness opens your eyes to truths most people overlook because they are too busy trying to be seen or trying to win every moment. Stillness is spiritual maturity. It is emotional mastery. It is strategic clarity. And when you walk with stillness, you stop being influenced by the external. You begin influencing the external simply through your presence. You no longer chase power. Power gravitates toward you because chaos cannot shake you. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. The calmest person in the room often is. Letting others reveal themselves. Most people will tell you who they are if you simply remain silent long enough. Enemies expose themselves through impatience. Manipulators expose themselves through inconsistency. Insecure people expose themselves through loudness. Arrogant people expose themselves through overconfidence. When you're silent, you don't just protect yourself, you give others the space to reveal their true nature. And once you know who someone is beneath their performance, you know exactly how to deal with them. Silence teaches you far more than arguments ever will. It shows you what someone fears. It shows you what someone values. It shows you where someone is weak and where someone is strong. You never have to force a revelation. Just hold your peace long enough, and people will reveal everything. The discipline of speaking only when it matters. Anyone can talk. Anyone can argue. Anyone can react. But not everyone can speak with timing. Not everyone can speak with weight. Not everyone can speak in a way that shifts the atmosphere. The wise do not speak to fill space. The wise speak to create impact. There will be moments when one sentence will do more than 1,000 explanations. There will be moments when your silence will matter more than 1,000 arguments. There will be moments when saying nothing will accomplish what shouting never could. Your words become more powerful when you speak less often. Your voice becomes more respected when you use it sparingly. Your influence grows when people realize that if you speak, it matters. Choosing when to be seen and when to be invisible. Not every moment requires your presence. Not every conflict requires your participation. Not every stage is meant for you. There is power in choosing strategically where you place your energy, your words, your presence, and your attention. You don't have to be accessible to everyone. You don't have to be involved in everything. You don't have to respond to every situation. When you choose where you appear, you increase the value of your presence. When you choose where you speak, you amplify the impact of your words. When you choose where you invest, you multiply the return of your energy. The world wants you to be reactive, emotional, and impulsive. Dominion requires you to be intentional, calculated, and grounded. Protecting your vision through mystery, every great transformation happens in the dark first. Seeds grow underground. Dreams mature in silence. New beginnings form away from the public eye. When you keep your plans private, you protect them from doubt. When you keep your growth private, you protect it from interference. When you keep your healing private, you protect it from trivial opinions. People destroy what they don't understand and criticize what they cannot control. That's why your mystery becomes your shield. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them assume. Their assumptions cannot sabotage what they cannot see. Your reality is safest when it is hidden in strategic silence, mastering the battlefield of the mind. Everything starts with thought. Everything collapses or rises based on mindset. Every weakness or strength is rooted in belief. When your mind is sound, you become hard to manipulate. When your mind is guarded, you become hard to mislead. When your mind is disciplined, you become hard to defeat. Winning the mind means you no longer take everything personally. You no longer internalize negativity. You no longer let fear dictate your decisions. Winning the mind means you become the observer of your emotions rather than the slave to them. You react slower. You think clearer. You act wiser. That is true power. Seeing through pride without challenging it. When someone is fueled by pride, they are simultaneously at their strongest and their most fragile. Pride tries to hide fear, but fear always leaks through cracks. Pride pretends to be confidence, but confidence doesn't need to pretend. You do not need to confront pride directly. You do not need to shout over it. You do not need to match its arrogance. All you need is discernment. To notice the hesitation in someone's voice. To notice the overreaction in their tone. To notice the insecurity behind their bragging. When you understand what someone's pride is protecting, you understand the most vulnerable part of them. And with that understanding, you can navigate without conflict, without resisting their ego, without triggering their defenses. Insight is more powerful than confrontation. Operating above the chaos. When you combine all 5 rules, you rise above the noise, above manipulation, above confusion, above emotional traps, above the drama that consumes others. People who operate with silence, perception, mental clarity, spiritual insight, and mystery are not easily shaken. They set the tone rather than reacting to it. They shape the environment instead of being shaped by it. They influence without forcing. They lead without shouting. The world becomes less like a battlefield and more like a field you're navigating with purpose. Walking in dominion. without dominating others. Dominion is not about overpowering people. Dominion is about overpowering your impulses, your reactions, your fears, your insecurities. Dominion is internal before it is external. A person who is mastered by their emotions cannot master anything else. A person who cannot control their mind cannot control their future. A person who cannot govern themselves cannot govern influence. But the one who moves through the world with silence, clarity, and intentional restraint walks with an authority that demands respect, not through force, but through presence. You do not need to chase control, because when you master these principles, control begins to follow you. You become the person others adjust themselves around. You become the one who brings calm into chaos. You become the one whose stillness speaks louder than noise. You become the mystery that unsettles the proud and strengthens the discerning. The final call. May you walk in quiet power. May you lead with wisdom instead of impulse. May your silence carry weight. May your perception be sharp. May your thoughts be guarded. May your discernment expose what pride hides. And may your mystery become your shield and your strength. Because when you live this way, your spirit becomes untouchable, hidden under the armor of wisdom, the shield of discernment, and the crown of self-mastery. This is the path to dominion, not the dominion of ego, but the dominion of divine clarity, divine restraint, and divine wisdom. In the end, these 5 principles all lead to a single, unshakable truth. Real power is internal. It's not loud, it's not frantic, and it's not rooted in ego. It is calm, deliberate, intentional. It is the kind of strength that cannot be taken from you because it comes from a mastery that happens long before the world ever sees the results. When you learn to hold silence in a culture obsessed with noise, you reclaim control over your reactions. When you shape perception with clarity and purpose, you stop letting the world decide who you are. When you rule the battlefield of the mind, you eliminate countless conflicts before they ever reach your door. When you see through pride, you navigate people with insight rather than tension. And when you choose mystery, you protect your purpose from premature exposure and unnecessary interference. None of this is manipulation. It is maturity. It is discernment. It is self-governance. This is the kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be heard. It doesn't need to argue to be respected. It doesn't need to prove anything because the presence alone speaks more loudly than performance ever could. People will begin to sense something different about you, a steadiness, a depth, an inner quiet that unsettles the proud, yet comforts the wise. They won't be able to predict you, control you, or drag you into small battles because you no longer live at that level. You operate above it calmly, strategically, and with a clarity most people never develop. While others rush to announce their plans, you will build silently. While they cling to validation, you will move with purpose. While they react emotionally, you will choose your moments with precision. This is how real influence grows. This is how authority forms. This is how dominion emerges not through force, but through inner alignment. So walk with quiet confidence. Move with intentional restraint. Guard your mind. Shape your presence. Let mystery be your protection and wisdom be your guide. And step into the world not as someone fighting for power, but as someone who already carries it calm, steady, untouchable, and entirely in command of themselves.